The Texas Chain Saw Massacre follows a group of friends, Sally, her brother Franklin, and their companions, as they travel through rural Texas to check on Sally's grandfather's grave after reports of grave robbing. Along the way they stumble upon an isolated house which is home to a deranged and sadistic family of cannibals, including the hulking, chainsaw-wielding Leatherface. One by one the group fall victim to the terrifying family, leaving Sally to fight for her life in one of the most harrowing and intense final acts in horror history. Hey, what's up horror fiends, it's your friendly neighbourhood horror buff, Wookie Craig, and today we are celebrating one of the most iconic, bone-chilling films in horror history. Can you believe it's 50 years since Tobe Hoopers' The Texas Chain Saw Massacre burst on the scene, forever changing the face of horror? That's right, on October the 1st, 2024, this horrific masterpiece officially hits the big 5-0. So grab a seat and let's talk about 5 great reasons why the Texas Chain Saw Massacre is still essential viewing, even 5 decades later. And of course, I've got some killer behind the scenes facts to keep things even more interesting. So on that note, let's dive in. Reason number 5, a symphony of nightmares. So let us start with something that doesn't always get enough love, and that is the sound design. Now, the Texas Chain Saw Massacre just doesn't terrify you with what you see, it messes with your head with what you hear. From the iconic revving of Leatherface's chainsaw to that eerie metallic clanging that you hear in the opening credits, every sound in this film is designed to get under your skin. It's primal, it's unsettling, and it makes you feel like you're trapped in this 83-minute nightmare with these characters. The sound design was created by Wayne Bell and Tobe Hooper, who had collaborated on Hooper's earlier movie Eggshells. Did you know that a lot of what you hear in the music are children's musical toys? There's cymbals, xylophones and shakers. Bell would also use his case stand-up 5-string bass with a movable bridge. Him and Tobe Hooper would pluck it and rub various things against it to make that unique clanging metallic rumbling soundscape that, when married with the grimy images on screen, fit just fantastically. Talk about the perfect storm. Did you know that Tobe Hooper also used real animal noises, like pig squeals and cattle sounds, to add to that disturbing atmosphere? That's right, this soundtrack is literally haunting you with sounds of a slaughterhouse. It doesn't get more unnerving than that. Reason number 4, hot, sweaty and sticky. Next up, we've got the movie's unsettling ambiance. This film is so hot, grimy and oppressive from start to finish. You can practically feel that sticky Texas heat just emitting from the screen when you watch it. And that farmhouse, it's not just a house of horrors, it feels like a tomb. And the very walls are soaked with chaos and madness. The way the film is shot, grainy, almost documentary style, makes you feel like you're watching something you shouldn't be. Like this is real and you're right there with the victims. Did you know it wasn't just the actors who felt that heat? Filmed between July the 15th to August the 14th, 1973 in Round Rock, Texas, the cast and crew were actually shooting in sweltering 100-degree Texas weather, and the meat on set, yup, animal parts, were rotting as they filmed and stunk to the high heavens. Talk about suffering for your art, eh? Reason number 3, the first final girl. Now let's give some love to the OG final girl herself, Marilyn Burns, who was a good few years before Jamie Lee Curtis. As Sally Hardesty, she delivered one of the most iconic performances in horror movie history. Marilyn wasn't just running and screaming, she gave everything she had to that role. The sheer terror in her eyes as she is chased by Leatherface is raw and real, making her one of the greatest final girls ever. And that scene in the dinner table was pure nightmare fuel, and she absolutely sells every second of it. Did you know that during the scene where Leatherface cut Sally's finger, they were actually having trouble getting the fake blood to work? So what did they do? They actually cut Marilyn Burns' finger for real, and that scream, yeah, it's 100% genuine. Yikes. Reason number 2, 2, relentless tension with no time to breathe. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre doesn't give you a second to catch your breath. The film's pacing is absolutely relentless, and once that terror starts, it doesn't let up. From the moment that metal door slams shut in Leatherface's house to the final chaotic chase, it's just tension building on tension. Now every scene feels like a ticking time bomb, and you feel like you're just waiting for the next horrible thing to happen. But the fact is, you barely see any gore, even though you feel like you've seen the most brutal violence. Now that is the power of great filmmaking, my friends. Did you know that Tobe Hooper was aiming for a PG rating? I know that sounds crazy, right? He thought that because there was minimal blood, he could sneak by with a PG rating. However, the MPAA wasn't having any of it, and the film eventually got an R rating. But it was banned here in England and many countries for years. Before we move to the number one reason why TCM remains one of the most iconic and unique horror movie experiences you will ever see, let me tell you about my own introduction to it. It was 1983 and we hadn't long since acquired our first Betamax VCR, or Betamax depending on where you're from. With its big top loader and big push down buttons, we thought we were the bee's knees. My parents were pretty young themselves and soaking their way through the many horror classics that was now available for all of us to watch in our own homes. Now, Texas Chainsaw Massacre was brutal and unforgettable, and I know I was way too young to see this kind of film, and it terrified me. This is the actual release of the film that was here in the UK, and this was the one that was banned. It was removed because of the video nasty scare and remained unavailable until the late 90s. Now, I bought this many years ago and it remains a great addition to my movie collection, even though I don't have a VCR anymore. Texas Chainsaw remains one of my personal favourites, even though it isn't a very easy watch at all. It remains a highly charged, visceral piece of cinema that deserves its legendary status. And now let's have a look at my number one reason. You ready for this? Reason number one, a house of horrors. Well, last but certainly not least, let's talk about that set design. The house where Leatherface and his clan live is one of the creepiest, most grotesque settings in horror movie history. It's not just a place, it's a living, breathing nightmare. From the bone furniture to the animal skulls and the dried up remains, every inch of the set screams death and decay, and you feel like you've stepped into a place that shouldn't exist, a place where sanity has no hold. Did you know that the set directors actually spent weeks scavenging real animal bones and furniture from junkyards to create that horrific look? Like I said, the house was so filled with filth and stench that the cast and crew had to hold their breath between takes. Now that is commitment to making us feel uncomfortable. So there you have it, folks. 5 killer reasons why the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is still a must-watch even 50 years later. Now this is not just a horror film, it's an experience, whether it's the mind-bending sound design, the sweat-soaked atmosphere, or Marilyn Burns cementing herself as one of the all-time great scream queens. This movie still delivers on every front. If you haven't seen it recently, this October is the perfect time to revisit the chainsaw-wielding madness and celebrate its 50th birthday. Thank you for hanging out with me today, horror fans. Be sure to like, subscribe and drop a comment below with your favourite Texas Chainsaw moment or fact. What's your thoughts on the sequels? Maybe that's something I should cover? And if you think there's another classic horror deserving of a shout out, let me know. But until next time, I'm Wookie Craig, and remember, if you hear a chainsaw revving in the distance, run for the hills. Oh no, don't run for the hills, because they have eyes.